I bet it's really weird seeing me back on this platform, huh? Good morning, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I know, like I said, it's been a hot minute since I've been on this platform, but there's definitely reasons why. I use TikTok a lot, and a lot of my followers came from TikTok and came over to here, to YouTube, which I really appreciated. At the same time, TikTok started doing their new pay creator fund and whatnot, and I have noticed that a lot of my viewers aren't able to see my videos, aren't able to interact with my videos. So I'm going to try to switch a lot of my content over to YouTube. I'm not saying I'm leaving TikTok. I'm just going to be able to make more detailed videos on the RB30 build and other things of that nature here. And then on TikTok, I'll just follow the local trends and stuff like that. But today we're going to go over everything that you need to know if you are going to buy an RB30 block and put a RB25, 26 head on one of these, and all the small things that I did that I think is really going to matter. So first things first, a lot of people want to know how much was this block and how do I acquire one? Well, a lot of the JDM shops actually have a distributor that they're able to go through to buy motors, or they actually have companies themselves called like JDM Dallas and JDM Hookup, where I got this block, that you can actually turn around and buy engines straight from Japan, and they'll ship it in and then they'll freight it over to you. So that's what happened with me, is I bought mine from JDM Hookup, and I bought it for right around $2,700. And a lot of the New Zealanders and Australians are probably having a stroke right now, but these are really expensive to get in America because a lot of people don't know what they're doing and a lot of people can't get their hands on them. So let's just dive into the first things that you need to know whenever you're turning around and buying an RB30 block. The first thing, try to go one that's under 100,000 kilometers. I get it, if it's over that, that's fine, but if you're trying to keep the stock pistons and rods, definitely try to get the newer or the less used engine. That should kind of be a given. The next thing that you need to do, obviously when you get the motor in, you have to get rid of the single overhead cam. I mean, it's kind of a given that we're gonna be bumping up to a dual overhead cam, and we're gonna be getting into the different heads that you can use for these RB30s. But first, let's get into the things that you need to know about the block. So the RB30 comes with 2.2 millimeter oil restrictors. If you don't know what oil restrictors are, they're located right there and right there. That being said, that is a lot of oil getting pumped up to the head. So what you can do is you can actually tap with a punch those oil restrictors down, and we put new oil restrictors in. Now for me, I'm gonna be running what is called a head drain. Pretty much it's a drain that you put on the back of the head of the motor that gets oil to siphon out faster. So I went with 1.5 millimeter restrictors. A lot of people will do 1.5 millimeter restrictor up front, and then they'll do a block off restrictor on the back. That way you only have that much oil hidden up to the head. All right, so the next thing that you need to know whenever you're building one of these RB30s is you have to drill and tap a hole for a new idler pulley. Now, the first idler pulley was actually located right here, but you have to get a Nissan SKYLINE and or an S2 RB30 block from a Holden Commodore for your build. If you get an S1, you're kind of out of luck and you bought the wrong motor. So make sure that it's an S2 out of the Holden Commodore, or make sure that you buy a R31 SKYLINE block. But anyways, so the reason why that you want that is because there's an idler pulley here, but you just take that out and you can relocate it right here without drilling and tapping, because it's the same. Then you have to drill and tap a hole into the side of the block here, yes, the front of the block, and make your own idler here. Now, for me, it wasn't too bad. I actually kind of messed up on the thread pitch for the first one, so I actually had to bump up, so I just went to a little bit bigger of a stud. Totally fine, still does the same thing, everything like that. The other thing that you have to also do is the water galley over here. You actually have to cut a little bit because the idler pulley runs into it. I mean, I'm assuming that you may be able to put a spacer on it, but I would rather try to run it OEM as possible. That way we make sure we get as much contact with the belt as we can. Next, we're gonna move over to the side of the block. Now, a lot of these components that I have on here are from my RB25 Neo. So just so you guys know, RB25 Neo parts do fit on the RB30 block. You have to have 2 knock sensors to go with the wiring harness. I adapted and pretty much drilled out all 3 of these holes to a little bit larger size to be able to put this coolant piping on, because the other one was more of a direct port rather than it kind of elbowing up. And then lastly, we have our oil our oil filter with our oil cooler on here that fit great. I used Cometic head gaskets, and then we also turned around and we got rid of the old oil pressure sensor because the oil pressure sensor never worked in the car anyways, and we actually made it for a VCT adapter so we can have oil pump up to the VCT, which we'll move to the head, like I said, in just a minute. Coming over to the other side of the block, you have to get an oil drain. Now, the nice thing about the R31 SKYLINE is they made a deal with Holden where they asked if they could use the RB30 from Holden and or patent the design. Holden agreed, but they said you cannot have them turbocharged. So what Nissan did is they turned around and they just pretty much bunged off all the holes that you would need for turbos. So like I said, all you have to do is just buy a oil drain adapter, and then you have an oil feed right here, and this is your coolant feed over here for your turbo. I will be putting those on once I get all those parts in, but right now I just leave them bunged off. Now, the next thing that I would do personally, you do not have to do this, but I would crack open that bottom end, and I would actually hone out the bores like I have. Take your rods and pistons out and replace them with new rings for the pistons. Take your cradle and your crankshaft out and just put all new bottom end bearings. I've been talking to a lot of Australians, and they said once they did new bearings, they were able to push right up to 500 horsepower easily and over 700 foot-pounds of torque. So I definitely wanted to make sure that we got good bearings. So I have King bearings coming in for the rods, and we used ACL bearings for the main caps. They didn't have King bearings at the time, but like I said, I would highly suggest replacing those. We're also going to be using ARP main cap, our main studs for the cradle. And then we're also going to be using ARP head studs because we are trying to make sure that this motor has no chance of lifting in any part. All right, now moving over to the head. So any of the RB25, 26s, the heads will bolt directly on. An RB20 head will not bolt on. Do not try it. You have a whole different piston size and CC size on those. It's just not worth your time. I'm gonna be running the RB25 Neo head because I actually had a Neo in my car before, and the flow rate of them and the power that they can take is a lot nicer than some of the other RB25 and 26s. That being said though, if you guys want a direct plug and play head, there's also the RB25 DE, and that literally drops on. The problem that I had, because I bought this head thinking like, oh man, I can't use my Neo head, was the fact that I would have to get all new valve springs for a turbo. I would have to buy RB20 camshafts and do a lot more work. And plus this head is actually in not great of condition. I thought it was gonna be a lot better. So I just stuck with the Neo head, and the only thing you have to really do is drill and tap for VCT. That's it. So I didn't know that, and it kind of scared me. So like I said, I went ahead and bought another head, but we're not gonna use it at all. So if anyone's interested in that DE head for their RB30 build, hit me up. Like I said, it just needs some thorough cleaning, and it definitely needs all the parts and components for that. But getting on to that, so this is from Franklin Performance. This is called a VCT feed line. Pretty much the issue that VCT heads have is that there's an oil galley right here that the RB30 does not provide, right around here. So what you have to do is you actually have to drill and tap inside the head to be able to redirect a line to actually feed to the VCT, and then you'll bung off that. I'm just waiting on the bit to come in for me to drill and tap that bung. But anyways, so yeah, so pretty simple. They give you all the measurements and everything like that, and it fits right behind the cover great. It's by Franklin Performance. I really appreciate it from those guys. They've definitely been helping me out, and I've ordered a lot of parts from them. But that being said, yeah, so after you have all that hooked up, you'll just run it over and it'll connect right here to the oil sensor if you want, or you can have it connect over here to this oil bung over here as well, because this is for another oil sensor and whatnot. So one of those two places will work. And yeah, other than that, all the other components on the RB25 do fit up. However, with the exhaust side, if you're going to be running the stock exhaust manifold, which we may be running, I'm not sure yet, I'm still on the fence about it, but if we do run that stock exhaust manifold, I have to get about a 12mm spacer, which I have found a dude out in Australia, because you guys are awesome, who does make 12mm exhaust spacers, so I may be doing that so we can slap our old turbo back on and try to set up this whole motor back on the old parts. Like I said, it's gonna be a budget build, and then when December rolls around, we're actually going to try and make this more of a performance-built motor. Now, don't get me wrong, I do have performance parts on here. I do have the aftermarket turbo, which is sitting over there. I do have 850cc injectors and a lot of other small goodies. But the biggest thing for me is I just wanted to try to get this up and running before H2OI, which is in about 3 weeks. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. If it doesn't happen, I'm not gonna be too upset, but it'd be really cool to be able to take that out to Ocean City. Other than that, guys, that's about it for RB30 stuff. The nice thing is that if you look up online and look up RB30 DOHC and or dual overhead cam, it comes up with a online packet and or manual on how to do all of this stuff yourself and all the small things that you'll need to know. For me, I printed it off and then pretty much put it all into a big binder. But that being said, going into what we were talking about earlier about me rebuilding this motor in December, I will be going forged pistons and rods. I will probably be doing a custom intake manifold, custom exhaust manifold. We're gonna go much bigger turbo because the big problem with these RB30s is that they lack on the amount of air to fuel that comes in. They need a lot of air. So we are gonna be running this fat and happy, which is fine. No big deal. But for us to make true power, I'm going to need a bigger turbo. And then I do wanna do cams as well and just kind of do the simple bolt-on stuff. Like I said, the other thing that I am gonna do from Franklin Performance is a oil drain from the head. So pretty much right here, we're gonna knock this little freeze plug, which is actually an oil plug really, out. And we're gonna drill and tap 2 holes, and there's gonna be a drain that we're gonna run from here, and it's gonna connect to the oil drain from the turbo. That way, no matter how much oil we're pushing up, we can get it out as fast as possible. Now that you guys kind of get the idea of how this RB30 has to be built, I hope I see a lot more of them start to come out. I have not ever really seen anyone, and a lot of people do the stroker kits, but the stroker kits typically run you right around $10,000, and this is a RB30 budget build. So we're gonna try to stick with being as budget friendly as possible. When we are done with this build and the motor is actually in the car and turned over, I will tell you how much it actually cost me to build this RB30, not to include anything that else I'm doing to SKYLINE, like paint and body work and whatnot. But other than that, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm gonna try to be uploading every single day this week until Monday of next week. And yeah, so just stick around and like I said, enjoy the new series, I guess.